Serenity is a 2005 film written and directed by Jomps Wobbin, Jumps Waffle, Junks Weebkill, Jorns Webborn, Junts Wingding, better known to slack-jawed ruffians who aren't his future best friend as Joss Whedon. The film was based on the short-lived 2002 sci-fi show Firefly, which ran for 14 or 15 episodes, depending on if you arbitrarily divide the 2-hour pilot into 2 parts or not. I don't. Given that the show and the film are pretty much impossible to extrapolate from each other, I'm not really going to try to do that. What's so fascinating about the entire Firefly Serenity oeuvre is that, financially speaking, all of it was a measurable failure as it pertains to ratings and ticket sales, and yet, to this day, it's one of the most popular and recognizable science fiction franchises on the planet. You know, that doesn't exclusively feature breakdance fighting laser stick boys. Serenity is something that Joss Whedon cannot be extracted from, but that was not always the case. He was certainly the brainchild of the world and its characters as its squeezably soft TV father, but Firefly's writer's room reads like a who's who of powerhouses whose work I still follow to this day. They include Once Upon a Time's Jane Espenson, the Tick creator Ben Edlund, Tim Minier, Agent Carter's Jose Molina, Arrow's Drew Z. Greenberg, and The Vampire Diaries' Brett Matthews. I think the writing staff cannot be understated on how each episode pushed the edges of who these characters are and could be within the universe. More remarkable still, I consider Firefly, though gone so young, to be the only television show of all time to bat 1,000 for its entire run, because like Lost had Stranger in a Strange Land and arguably the entire 6th season of the show. Buffy had Double Meat Palace, The West Wing had Access, Game of Thrones had Unbound, Unbent, Unbroken, Doctor Who had Peter Capaldi's first season. Come at me. Hell, The Sopranos gave terrible storylines to Tony and Carmela's kids for pretty much the entire run of the show. What were their names? One was like PJ, and the other was Popsicle Stick. Does that sound right? Sure, given the 3 to 6 seasons that I'm sure they foresaw that the show would eventually run, there would have been some stinkers in there for sure. Knowing the Whedon versus propensity for storylines involving characters either pretending to go evil or actually becoming a bad guy, I'm sure season 3 would have brought us a plot line where Wash gets brainwashed by a 6-foot-tall umbrella slug named Paraxmus, played dutifully by Armin Shimmerman. Actually, that sounds pretty good. Firefly and Serenity are essentially the story of 9 people of different backgrounds and ideals coming together to make a life for themselves in a universe that is no longer a symbol. Oh, Jesus. I see Black Cherry. Oh, I almost blew a door off in here. Firefly and Serenity are essentially the story of 9 people of different backgrounds and ideals coming together to make a life for themselves in a universe where that is no longer a simple thing to do. The television show focuses on setting up the world our characters inhabit, and the film tends to focus on burning the motherfucker to the ground, because Serenity is about coming to terms with being the little guy, still fighting a war they have been for years when they're outgunned, outmanned, outspent, and generally out everything for its entire existence. For the crew of the Serenity, both inside the world of the show and outside of it, the story has been one of being the underdog when you will assuredly lose. And yet, somehow, they always manage to pull it out. Serenity should have never been a film. TV shows that don't even make it through their first season don't get theatrical releases. This simply does not happen. Looking at you, Terriers movie. I mean, Edge of Darkness was a BBC show that got remade into a film starring Mel Gibson, which happened to come out during his crazy phase, i.e., any time in history, but I seriously can't find a show that ran for this short of a time period that got a theatrically released film. I mean, even Stevens had to run for 3 seasons before they got a movie, and that was just on the channel that the show was already on. And yes, I understand that Firefly was something of a rarity on DVD because the show was practically born there, coming into popularity way beyond its original street date because people just kind of pass the discs around. This created so much word of mouth after the fact that a studio wanted to turn it into a major motion picture. This is without precedent. This simply does not occur. Shows canceled too soon do not get a mid-budget theatrical run film and an opportunity to close out the show's storylines. Oops, saw some eyebrows twitch there, but make no mistake about it. Serenity was designed to be the end of Firefly, but a whole lot more on that later in this episode. For now, let's jump into the film. The first few minutes of this thing is so deft and lean. I think it deserves special attention for what it manages to accomplish. Part of the deal with getting money to make a film like this is you need any audience, regardless of their familiarity to the television show, to be brought up to speed as quickly as possible. So we start with a voiceover from River's childhood teacher explaining the entire conflict in which our story resides as quickly as possible. Basically, we terraformed a bunch of places and then we formed an alliance which turned into the evil empire against all the people that refused its control, which is ingeniously turned around by the teacher I mentioned because she tells us that the little people out there on the edges of the galaxy are bad people and the Alliance is good people. And then she stabs a little girl in the eye. Okay, yeah, so I see why the Alliance is dishonest and bad. Then got it, okay. And we keep jumping. We jump from the River Simon backstory into the operative's current timeline, and here's the first interesting deviation from what the story appears to be on the surface. Simon is the protagonist in this story, at least for parts of it. On the other side of that, the operative is the antagonist for the entire film, though his motivations and what he's attempting to accomplish do change. And River is I want to say the MacGuffin, but really only the operative is concerned with catching her and Simon with saving her, because honestly, for most of the film, nobody else seems to care, and it makes our previous protagonist from the TV show into kind of an abusive dong wagon from time to time, until that moment he picks a side, at which point the movie belongs to him now. It's structured quite strangely, and I love it even more because of that. Anyway, we finally get our title after establishing what this film is about. That the operative will do anything in the galaxy to find River Tam, and she just happens to be on a spaceship called the Serenity with a mixed bag of rich, chocolatey yoo-hoos. Commence long shot. Is that the music we're using? Can't you get my editor on the phone? Why is this music happening? I'd really like it better if this music wasn't happening. I didn't pay the money for this, and I think the content ID goes get pretty miffed.
This landing is gonna get pretty interesting.
Define interesting.
Oh God, we're all gonna die?
The dialogue in this 4-minute, 28-second shot is the Toyota showroom of why so many people have fallen in love with Joss Whedon over the years. We are introduced to the entire crew, walked through the geography of the entire ship, educated on its many functions and abilities, and oh hey, remember that thing I said about Simon being the protagonist? Well, the film just gave up on that too, and now Simon is acting like a secondary character until it becomes relevant again later, but he never stops being the primary plot motivator. The film just does what it wants. At first, it's about saving River, but once Mal gets a goal, and the goal is taking the Alliance down, which just so happens to invalidate River needing protection because they only want her for the information that she has, so once she's not the only one who has it, the stakes of the film become more universal. Oh, and I'm guessing I don't really need to talk about this whole space western thing. We're all already on the same page. Everyone talks like they're from the most remote parts of the southern United States because they're from the most remote parts of the United Planets of the Federation. Technology is at a premium, so while present, people use it sparingly, and guns and horses and all that. Oh, hey, it's Dennis Reynolds. Guess the old dentist system didn't work out. Well, I was going to go a different way with the joke, but it's just like, damn, Daniel. And that's actually a scene in the film where the movie actually manages to pass the Bechdel test while people are using telepathy and wordless gestures. Also, there's Joss Whedon's dad. We see our anti-hero hero people do a bad thing, stealing payroll from the working people, but specifically only from Alliance payroll, who are the bad guys, so taking their money is good, but questionable. This is the gray area. And you will see this as a repeated bit of character articulation on the part of Mal within this film, while the show paid special care to ensure that the heart of the TV show always beat from within Nathan Fillion's tender, luxurious chest. In the film, as I said before, the protagonist is Simon, for a bit, as he is the only one attempting to accomplish something specific, so Mal participates in a series of seemingly out-of-character dick moves. Dick move, dick move, dick move, dick move, dick move, dick move. Dick move, bro. because he isn't driving the plot. In fact, he's standing in the way of it until he answers his reluctant call to action when Whedon starts killing off characters to catapult him into the conflict. Mal doesn't want to be in this conflict, and the operative forces his hand.
I don't murder children. I do. If I have to.
So he ties his friend's newly minted corpses to the outside of his... Okay, check this out. Having seen the show and being intimately familiar with who Mal is, the difference between understanding his actions and going along with him and thinking he might just be the shunniest dickhead of a leader since Rick. And I think Rick sucks. Mal is a person who is out of options. He transforms from the roguish charlatan we are intimately familiar with on the TV show into the guy we never got to see at the end of season 6, basically. Once people start dying, his emotions just turn off, which is a designed move because Zoe does exactly the same thing and making tough calls that he doesn't want to, like taping their friends to the ship to slide past a bunch of space zombos, endangering the rest of the crew in an effort to speak truth to power. So it's not like the Chewy Center nougat Mal has disappeared. It's just that if Serenity was your introduction to this world, it's entirely possible you might dislike him quite strongly. If you want your friends to like Firefly, don't start them here. This is the ending, and complicated endings are a generally bad place to start in a story, like leaves on the wind. Watch how I soar.
But did you know?
Joss Whedon got the idea for Firefly while reading what I think is one of the greatest war novels of all time and an absolute favorite book of mine, The Killer Angels by Michael Shara, a book I remember all the way back from Pace history class at Wilson Middle School for advanced students and also people like me. The Killer Angels is a book recounting the Civil War and more accurately the Battle of Gettysburg. It was later made into a film, Gettysburg, featuring an absolutely blistering performance by Jeff Daniels as Colonel Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain, who has the coolest storyline because he and his men basically run out of ammo, fix bayonets, and swing down a hill like a door, and that's how we won Gettysburg. Oh, I guess we provides a terrible context there. You could also just say that's how we lost Gettysburg, but it's kind of the point, because Firefly is about the fight after the one we just lost against ourselves. See, Firefly is the story of the people that got swung on and basically murdered to death by a gaggle of screaming men. Like your Twitter feed sometimes when you have a movie show on the internet and you decide to have an opinion on Star Wars, it's like that. A lot of screaming boys. Joss has said that Firefly is the story of the people that lost the war, which in this Civil War context does paint the show in a bit of a South will rise again kind of flatulent dick swagger. But that's just another one of the reasons that the show was lightning in a bottle. No matter who you were, you could relate to it. Whether Mal, Zoe, Jane, Wash, Nara, Kaylee, Book, River, or Simon, you could relate. And the movie is simply done being relatable. It's got work to do, and it does the work beautifully. God, so beautifully. The TV show never looked this good. Shit, TV shows don't look this good now because Serenity was shot on film. So beautiful musings like this are now inextricably part of the art form.
Going on a year now, I ain't had nothing twixt my nethers weren't run on batteries.
Forever. An extra shout out to the lighting in this film because it is absurdly gorgeous. I love the fight scene in the bar with River because so much of it is done in uninterrupted medium shots that showcase what happens when you cast a professional dancer as River Goran Tam. But what is with Joss Whedon and weirdo sex robot subplots? Let's retire this one, buddy. It was weird on Buffy, and then you did it here, and then you made an entire show out of it, pretty much. Hey, Sarah Paulson's in this movie. Jesus Christ! The film is kind of always in this non-terminating spiral into super drama that goes way, way beyond anything the show ever did. I mean, Jane was always mouthing off, but in the film, he's throwing some very real dong launchers about Mal and Zoe's war experience, and every scene is like this. The Star Trek reboot takes the cake for taking seemingly innocuous character traits and cranking up the volume on them, but this movie gives it a run for its money because it asks the question, what happens when you take a small crew from a small show with small dreams and drop them into a conflict where the stakes are higher, larger, and deeper than any other science fiction film probably ever? I mean, the big bad alliance that lords over the entire universe managed to fuck up so badly that they not only killed an entire planet's worth of people who died in no doubt torturous ways, they also created the cannibalistic race of super mutants that wear kickstands inside of their faces and don't read super good. And the little guys stand up for all the other little guys because they're tired of getting stepped on by the big guy. And it costs them a lot. Too much. And yet, here we are. There is this point in the film. It's right here, where everyone has the same thought. Oh my God, they're all going to die. That's why this was important. At this point, we are convinced that Whedon is about to burn the motherfucker down, and there ain't a goddamn thing you can do about it. When you want to watch a masterclass on how to raise your stakes for the third act, watch this movie. Everyone is wounded, beaten, bloodied, and clutching potentially life-threatening wounds at the end of this thing, and they're still fighting. They're still fighting. Because that's what this story is about. Standing up with the little guy and speaking truth to power. Let me tell you a story. I saw this film originally at the Can't Stop the Signal screenings months before the film came out for real, and promptly opened at number 2 behind Flight Plan before dropping to number 8 in its second weekend and getting kicked around by the Wallace and Gromit movie. It wasn't great. I procured tickets some months ahead, entirely hyped to see what at the time was the first film that Joss Whedon had ever directed. Trust me when I say that this is the audience you see this movie with for the first time. They laughed, they cried, they cheered, it was great. But there was this one woman in the row behind me who I think about to this day. I don't remember her face very well because the theater was pretty dark, but some 11 years later, I hear her cries when I close my eyes sometimes. That's not hyperbole. That shit is literally a true thing. You remember this moment? It's when you realized that more Firefly is actually just more opportunity for Joss Whedon to coldly and casually murder characters you dearly love, like Quicksilver. Oh, nobody cared about him? Just none people cared? Ah, sucks for Quicksilver, even if his death was a thinly veiled stab at Fox for the one thing they were actually doing right with the X-Men films. Girl, you better than that. Back to the woman. So as the theater falls into a hushed lull as her favorite Coleoptera challenge spaceship plummets toward the planet's surface, only to be saved by Wash's best-in-class handling and disengagement of their anti-lock brakes, which is when I heard her scream. She became inconsolable. And mind you, the movie did not stop. This woman could simply not come to grips with the fact that Wash wasn't going to be around anymore. Every line of dialogue we struggle to hear over the seemingly inscrutable cacophony bellowing from the chair just behind me as each member of the Serenity's crew was wounded. The wails got louder and more unhinged. It was beginning to become an issue, and her friends seemed to be doing their best to calm her down, thankfully. And then Simon got shot, and the theater people came to escort her out. She didn't get to see the end of the movie. And I think about that woman like every day. Is she okay? You know, like has she found some peace? Because Firefly and Serenity are sort of the opposite. There is no peace here, not for us, because we're the little guys. I'm gonna make some statements and some of them might be upsetting, but I think you should hear me out for a sec. Firefly is great because it was canceled. Serenity is great because it was a box office thud. We share an intimate connection with these 9 people, not just because they're super witty and are the most fun when simply interacting with each other, but because at the end of the day, they always lost. People that watched the original airing of The Train Job as the pilot for the show are going to understand what I'm about to say, because some of those beautiful people have been fighting to save these characters for as long as they've been fans of these characters. The Save Firefly campaign started literally the night Fox decided to air the show completely out of order, which was day 1. And they didn't save it. We love these characters more because we've been watching them lose every fight they ever got in. I don't think you can be more of an underdog than Firefly. It aired out of order. A few episodes were never broadcast. It got canceled. It found a new life on DVD, and somehow that transformed into getting a feature film made by a team of people that clearly cared about this a whole lot. And then it tanked. And frankly, I think Firefly got canceled a second time by the time they were shooting this movie. In the original script, Wash and Book didn't die. And there's a few different reasons for this floating around. One was about contract negotiations for a sequel, and I posit that is total bullshit, because once people started asking, how do we make more Firefly without Wash flying the ship? And the answer is you don't. Whatever the reason for killing them, the reality is the decision provided finality to the story. The big bad was exposed for who they were, and the biggest mystery of the show was solved. Firefly came into this world as this perfect, tiny, angry thing, and it went out of this world as a much larger film version of a tiny, angry thing. I'm sure there will always be rumblings of a Netflix revival because brown coats are fueled exclusively by hopes and dreams, but I kinda hope it doesn't happen. And that's not just because the X-Files revival was such a misfire it managed to somehow shoot itself in its own dick, but because bringing shows back from the dead rarely works. The pressure of simply trying to survive has a way of permeating through the entire crew of a show. That's the space that Serenity lives, in a constant state of confusion about its own existence. That means the world to me. Because as I walked out of that screening so many years ago, I turned to the two friends with me and asked, did we just have our Empire Strikes Back moment? Even with a temporary musical score in place and some unfinished effects in the film, it was pretty clear that we had. As a kid, I never even got that moment because I had never watched Star Wars in the correct order. Like, to me, Darth Vader was always Luke's dad because I think I watched Jedi first. I was like 6, shut up. So Serenity gave me the most unforgettable film moment of my life. I will never forget the woman who was so affected so greatly by the film we were watching, she became inconsolable. But that says a lot about the entertainment we consume once we see what it is that we love and how it is capable of making people feel. And above all else, this universe seems to make people feel protective. And that's very simple. Firefly hasn't lived a day in its life and not needed protecting. So if you were ever confused as to why some people dress a certain way, talk in a certain way, or act a certain way as it pertains to this show, that's why. Because as first loves go, Serenity is the one that broke everyone's heart and got away. Futurama got 7 seasons. We used to talk about that injustice like it was on par with Firefly. That show got revived more times than Lazarus, literally. So this all kind of means what you think it means. There probably won't ever be more Firefly, and it probably won't be great if there is. So I think we just treasure what we got because you can't take the sky from me. Yay, I'm super adept at opening up more than a decade's old wounds. Yay, we did it together through the power of friendship. Somewhere around the time I blew by the 4,000 word mark in writing this episode, I realized that I could talk about this universe and its characters probably all day long and still not scratch the surface of why it was so great in the first place. Please like this video and subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. 2016 was a great year for Chainsaw Suit Original and my show, so keep doing what you're doing. Okay, on to the voting. We're gonna do things a little bit differently, so let's set this up. I have the time and the drive to do 2 episodes in December before the year is out, which will be followed by my Fave 5 of 2016 in January. I want to do the voting all at once, so I'm putting up 5 movies, and the top 2 will go on to become the episodes next month. They are a Nolan, a Scorsese, a Bigelow, a Fincher, and an Anderson. Good luck. What an easy decision you find yourself facing. You're welcome. Okay, bye.